I did not think that this novel would be as shocking, unbelievable as it was. I'm talking about David Grann's The Wager. This book, this is a nonfiction. It is hard to believe that these events actually happened and that anybody could have gone through what the crew of the Wager went through. So, in the Wager, you're going to be following a. It was back in, I guess, I don't want to say colonial times. I wish I had the right year. I guess it was the mid 1700s. So it was before the American Revolutionary War by about 30 years, around this, like the 1740s. And what had happened was there was a milder skirmish going on between the English and Spain, known as the War of Jenkins' Ear. And it got its name from a Spanish soldier bursting into a English, some kind of ship captain, some kind of Navy person's dwelling, cut off his ear, and then he supposedly went and showed the English government like, hey, look at my ear. It became the War of Jenkins' Ear. And what it was the English were doing a lot of covert operations to raid and plunder Spanish treasure ships, mainly coming back from South America and the Middle Americas and Latin America. When they were coming back with treasures and silver and things like that, the English would go in with man of war ships and squadrons and attack them and take or attempt to take their gold. They weren't very good at it. The Wager was one boat in a squadron led by Captain or Commodore George Anson, who became a very famous Commodore in the British Navy, and he was leading the boat, leading the squadron on the main flagship man of war ship called the Centurion. The Wager was one of the smaller ships, man of war ships included in there. So their mission was to sail from England all the way down to South America, around Cape Horn, up and attack a Spanish galleon and take all of its treasure. Well, that is not what happened. They got stuck somewhere around Patagonia trying to go around Cape Horn. So that's that southernmost tip of South America. If you look at it on a map, you can even see Antarctica down there. So it's very cold. The storms are crazy. The sea is crazy. They were trying to go through Drake's Passage, which, if any of you are not familiar with Drake's Passage, the waters there are crazy rough. And the Wager gets separated from its, mothership, the Centurion, and it eventually runs aground, and it runs into some rocks and strands the crew. The ship's going down. It's kind of stuck in there and taking on water, so it's not super sinking, but it's starting to disintegrate. Now, before this happened, they were already getting wrecked with scurvy, which is a disorder linked to vitamin C deficiency. So the poor guys were really sick. They were dying. They were losing a large amount of their crew, and then they get wrecked. And then they end up on this island. They ended up calling it Wager Island. And they're there for months. And what starts happening is the normal stuff that happens when groups of people are left to their own devices is they start kind of getting into cliques, seeing each other as the enemy, and then there becomes talk of mutiny. There eventually is a mutiny against the captain, and one group of the Wager's crewmen takes off, goes on another horrible, horrific adventure, and ends up landing in Brazil, is arrested, held hostage, eventually transported to Portugal, and then back to England. So one section makes it back to England. Now, when they get back to England, they're kind of getting looked into by the government. Eventually, that kind of goes away. But there was still that whole other mutinied section on the on Wager Island that included the captain, Captain Cheap. Captain Cheap then goes on his own adventure and ends up in off of Chile, and eventually gets transported and shows up back to England too. And then there starts becoming some finger pointing, as in to who did the mutiny. So that's as much as the details as I'm going to give away. That is the broad strokes. David Grann, who's more famously known for his Killers of the Flower Moon, he wrote that. He also wrote The Lost City of Z and a couple of other very well-known nonfictions. This is how a nonfiction should read. So those of you that have watched some of my other nonfiction reviews, nonfictions, when they read like a like a bibliography, it sucks. It's boring. It's not enjoyable. This is definitely not that. This reads like a fictional story, but it's true events. The book itself is only 257 pages, and then there's another 100 pages of works cited and notes by David Grann. I also watched a YouTube video, an hour with David Grann. This guy put in a ton of work and research to go into this book, The Wager. A Tale of Shipwreck, Mutiny, and Murder. And that's exactly what it was. These men, all of them, all the groups, went through, I cannot think of more suffering that a human being could possibly go through. Maybe those in like the Holocaust and the Trail of Tears with the Native Americans. It's along those lines. You're gonna, when you when you don't think it's gonna get worse for them, it gets worse, and it just keeps getting worse, and it just keeps getting worse. You would think that something like that would be a depressing read, but it's not. This is not a depressing read. It's very interesting, very well done. I will say I think the first 50 pages are a little slow, but that's because David Grann is trying to give you a very solid historical background on the time period, what led to them going on an adventure, and who the main characters in this story are. So bear with it. The first 50 pages, I was kind of like, nah, is this going to be one of those nonfictions? It's definitely not. I highly recommend it if you're looking for a nonfiction. I don't even like that time period, the 1740s. It's really not my thing. Neither is like the captains and pirates, like the Pirates of the Caribbean kind of stuff. It's not my bag. I don't really like it. I don't think it's cool. I read this book because this book was getting such good praise on other book talks, booktubes, and things like that. Definitely worth a read. Like I said, it's not very long, but it's going to read a little bit longer than the 257 pages just because of historical stuff. It's not a fast read, but definitely recommend it. So if I were to give this, on a scale of 1 to 10, this is a solid 8.5. This was a great read. I really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. So that's all for this one. Go ahead and give The Wager by David Grann a read. I'm going to be posting a video soon on the start of the book club, and look forward to getting that started, and talk soon.